Hi Fabio, my name is Ellen and I will be correcting these essays for you. So I'm really happy to see that you've begun the course and that you've started your essays. So that's wonderful. Let's take a look at what you sent us. Okay, we've got the first essay about schools and the other one about, okay, great. Let's see what you said here, shall we? In the recent years, people has been thinking that school system needs a reform. Some of them believe that it should change its way of teaching and so to become more entertainment oriented. Instead, other still think that school's purpose is only to educate. As far as I am concerned, I agree with the fact that schools should carry out funny activities. This essay will discuss these issues using examples from newer teaching methods and older ones to demonstrate points and support arguments. Okay, so for the most part, I thought this was good. You had some issues with grammar that we need to look at and correct because you really want to aim for accurate sentences in your introduction. Remember that your introduction is the examiner's first impression of your writing, and so you want it to be a strong impression, one with accurate language throughout, because it's essentially going to influence the way the examiner is going to look at your essay. So you want that to be a solid, well-written, accurate paragraph. So let's look at it again. In recent years, without the, people have been thinking that the school system needs a reform. Now here when you said some of them, I didn't really know who you were talking about because you had here people, system, school system, and reform. So when you have this them, it's really not clear to us which noun this refers to. I mean, okay, yes, in an intellectual kind of way, we can figure out that you're talking about people, but still it is confusing because it's not entirely clear what or who this is referencing. Okay, so what you could have said here is you could have just said some believe that it should change its way of teaching. Believe it or not, that creates a little more clarity. So why don't we try that? Some believe that it should change its way of teaching so to become more entertainment oriented without that and not instead. I would have said here maybe let's see. You know what you could have done? You could have combined these two sentences. I think that would have been a good idea, and use a word of contrast like a while or an although or however. Let's see what it sounds like if you do that. So, some believe that it should change its way of teaching so to become more entertainment oriented, while others still think that school's only purpose is to educate. See, that sounds a lot better. As far as I am concerned, I agree with the fact that schools should carry out fun activities, not funny. This essay will discuss these issues using examples from newer teaching methods and older ones to demonstrate points and support arguments. Okay, and then you're fine. So let's move on. Entertainment is very important to enhance skills that are very important for students' professional careers. Now, here you really want to be careful. In one sentence, you have very important written twice. This is something you definitely want to avoid. You want to show the examiner that you have a range of vocabulary and that you don't have to keep using the same words over and over again. So, you could have said something like, entertainment is very important to enhance skills that are critical for students' professional careers. Forms of activity like sporting events stimulate social interaction and promote teamwork. As a result, children will build thriving relationships. Furthermore, also computer games have been more and more frequently by teachers. Okay. Let's see. Furthermore, computer games have also been considered more and more frequently by teachers as very effective teaching methods because they support children's cognitive development, their ICT development, and their logical skills such as planning, organizing, and innovating. As a matter of fact, a recent research from the UN and also without this A here. So recent research from the UN indicates that children that experience this new teaching method increase their logical skills by 40%. Therefore, entertainment has a lot of benefits on children's education. Okay, so I thought the structure of this was very good. You organized it well. Your progression of ideas was good. I didn't really love your linking words. I felt that some of them were a little informal or a little maybe unnatural. So just to show you what I mean here, like I didn't like this as a matter of fact. There was another one. Where was it? Instead. Up here when you wrote instead, I didn't like that one either. You could see I replaced it later on with while. Let's see. So that's more or less it about this. And then the other thing I want to talk to you about was entertainment in the classroom. So it's really important. It's funny actually. IELTS doesn't really directly test vocabulary in any portion of the exam. Instead, what it does is it indirectly tests your vocabulary through things like writing, through things like reading, and so forth. What they're essentially checking here in this essay is your understanding of the word entertainment. So what are we talking about when we're talking about entertainment in school? What does the word entertainment mean? What does the word entertainment mean? There we go. Okay. So this is really important. What you talked about here, you talked about activities like sports, and then you talked about using computers in schools. Those are maybe not wholly academic, but you cannot necessarily argue that they are 100% entertainment. So, for example, if you're on a sports team in school, that's not necessarily entertainment for the person doing it. It might be considered entertainment for the person watching it, but for the person actually doing the sport, it could be exhausting, it could be tiring, it could be exhilarating, it could be stressful, okay? But not necessarily entertaining, because what does entertainment mean? It means something that amuses us, something that kind of makes us laugh, something that makes us feel joy and this kind of light-hearted feeling. So your examples here talking about sporting events and then the skills that it promoted, and then here when you talked about using computers, if you're learning something very complicated, no matter how much time you spend on a computer, it doesn't make it necessarily enjoyable. It doesn't make it entertaining just because you're using a computer. Does that make sense? So I disagree with the examples that you've given here. And the reason why I disagree with them is because they're not showing an examiner that you've understood what entertainment in the classroom means. Okay? So I hope that point is clear. This is important. Because like I said before, they're essentially testing your vocabulary here. All right, let's continue. Having said that, the classic teaching method is nowadays outdated for several reasons. Firstly, because children must sit... okay, this is not a full sentence. You have to be careful here. So I would have kept this as one sentence. It's a little long, but it's fine. So the classic teaching method is nowadays outdated for several reasons. The first of which is because children must sit for hours listening to long lectures without humor and a break. As a consequence, the lessons are very monotonous and make children fall asleep. Secondly, this situation reduces drastically, okay, careful, it drastically reduces the children's productivity level. As a matter of fact, all right, I don't like as a matter of fact, it's too conversational. A recent, all right, you just did the same thing here. Look, as a matter of fact, a recent research. So let's change this. You could say, for example, a recent study from Harvard with an R shows that with this old teaching method, children are 35% less proactive than those who study with an entertainment-based curriculum. You can't just add this, then the one based on entertainment. You're not comparing similar things, so you have to do a little more with the sentence. Therefore, this result not poses in doubt, but therefore this result casts doubt on the effectiveness of this educational system. Okay, I'm glad that you did this. I liked this paragraph, even though I know I focused on some of the mistakes. But I think that this paragraph should have come first, because this is what we call a concession paragraph, where you're telling us, you're basically analyzing the opposite side of the argument. You're analyzing what you don't support. And so this really should come first. And then, towards your conclusion, that's when you should analyze the side that you actually do support. Okay, the one that favors entertaining education. So I would like to see this paragraph coming first and then this paragraph coming second in your body. All right, so to conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly believe that schools should use more enjoyable activities to teach and educate children because they are very effective. Okay, for this reason, it is predicted that more and more schools will utilize this new method of teaching. Okay, that's fine. All right, so Fabio, I hope that the feedback on this essay is clear. You understood where the strengths, where the weaknesses of it were. If you have any questions about it, do let me know. And why don't we now go on to your second essay about doing an enjoyable activity with a child. Skills and creativity are very important for the future of children, and people are split on the method to use to improve them. Okay, some believe, again, because some of them is just not clear, what are we talking about? Are we talking about skills? Are we talking about people? Are we talking about children? So just get rid of this. Some believe that fun activities, careful, fun and funny mean something different. The better word here is fun. I don't love this word. It's a little too informal and a little conversational. But between funny and fun, I prefer it, okay? So, some believe that fun activities are more valuable than reading, while others have the opposite thinking. This essay will discuss these issues using examples for both development methods. Okay. So, you know what happened here? Take a look at this. They're asking you something very specific in the question. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this? Actually, to what extent do you agree with this? It's a very direct question. So you've told us what some people think. You've told us what other people think. Nowhere, though, do you actually answer this question. You never tell us to what extent do you agree. And that's what we're concerned about. All right, we're not concerned about whether you're going to talk about both of them. We want to know what you think. All right, and anything that you talk about that is anything other than what you think is not relevant to this. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you answer this question in the introduction. The reason for that is if you look at the band descriptors for task achievement under band 7, it says presents a clear position throughout the response. Throughout means from the beginning to the end. So your position is your answer to whatever this is. So it's very important that you include it in your introduction. Okay? And that's, like I said, important for band 7. But apart from that, since they're asking you what your opinion is, it is only useful to include the other side if it is in some way is part of your opinion. Otherwise, it's an irrelevant paragraph. All right? Let's see what you wrote, though, and how you actually developed this. Firstly, fun has a positive effect on motivation levels, enhancing what young people learn and how much we memorize. Furthermore, if the experience is funny, children will stay focused, ED, and curious for a longer time. Nevertheless, enjoyable activities reduce children's stress, and as a result, also their creativity will benefit positively from this. This is the wrong linking word here. For example, a study in the journal College Teaching revealed that students could remember a mathematics lecture more easily when the lecturer added jokes about relevant topics. Therefore, entertainment, get rid of also, has positive benefits on children's development. All right, let's see what this is. All right, I kind of feel like this paragraph doesn't really belong in this essay. This essay is asking about activities done with children, okay? And the experience that you used talks about a lecture, okay? And so, I mean, up to this point, you were okay, but then the example that you actually used to support all of this talked about a classroom lecture, and no one is going to say that a classroom lecture is an enjoyable activity. So we're talking about other kinds of things here, things that can improve skills. So things like sports, things like games, things like drawing and dancing and you know, playing hide and seek. Okay, even video games can potentially enhance skills. These are all enjoyable activities. So you were talking about enjoyable activities in a kind of theoretical way, kind of abstract. And then when you got here, I thought, well, no, this isn't really what we're talking about at all. All right. So, and again, the idea is to talk about the skills and the creativity. You briefly mentioned creativity, but that's all you really did. We'll talk about that more after we read your next paragraph, okay? So let's do that. Let's see what you wrote in the next paragraph. Secondly, oh, before I do that, I want you to be careful about something else. I wanted to mention this. Take a look at this. Firstly, furthermore, nevertheless, for example, therefore, you really have to be careful about this. These are called front position markers. And if you use too many of them, it will pretty much automatically take you to a band 6 for coherence and cohesion. They're considered rather intermediate ways of creating cohesion. And so I want you to get into the habit of not using so many of them. I've already found that some of your writing included some that were misused. So try to reduce the number of these you use. There are other ways to create cohesion in your paragraphs. We'll talk about that as you progress in the program. Okay? So now let's go to your next paragraph. Secondly, reading strengthens brain connections and builds new connections. What? No. Secondly, reading strengthens brain connections and builds new ones. Now that would be okay, because then new ones is a way of creating cohesion. Okay? This helps to improve cognitive skills such as problem solving and reasoning. Moreover, books and stories make children go beyond the real world, and so to think outside the box without the classic. Although children have a great imagination, reading increases their creativity further. For instance, recent research without the A from the UN indicates that children who participate, careful with your spelling, in reading activities can increase their creativity up to 30%. Consequently, although reading is an old education method, it still provides positive effects on children. Okay, so here you definitely talked about creativity, and I was happy about that. But there are some things we have to change here, okay? We'll talk about it in a minute. Let's take a look at your conclusion, and then we'll talk about what needed some work here. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly believe that both are valuable methods to educate children, and I think that we should find a balance, or a balance should be found on the use of both to give children the best education possible. Okay, so let's talk about this. So you basically want a balance. Okay, and it says better skills and more creativity than reading. You thought they both produce both. Okay. So I already told you that you needed to say that. in your introduction that you think both are necessary as they help develop different skills in children. So I would have written that. Then let's talk about this. I already told you that you've overused some cohesive devices. One of the things that's incorrect here is this firstly and this secondly. Firstly and secondly are okay if you're arguing the same side of something, but you're actually arguing the exact opposite. So this really would have been better if you had had an on the one hand, on the other hand. That would have been more appropriate. Or neither of these, and then just like nothing here, and then having said that would have been okay. Okay, or however also would have been okay. So let's see. So this was about creativity, and that was fine for me. I thought you did actually well here. But this I felt was too focused on school, academics, and not really on an activity and what that develops. So as I mentioned before, you could have talked about sports and how sports help develop teamwork, cooperation, hand-eye coordination, physical fitness. So you could have talked about that. Okay. You could have talked about, maybe like board games and how they help build strategic thinking, patience, teamwork, learning how to win and how to lose. So sportsmanship, that's actually the word for this. So you could have talked about those things in this paragraph, okay? But like I said, I didn't really feel like this example was relevant. Okay, Fabio, so that brings us to the end of this correction. Lot of information, I know. So let's talk about what your next steps need to be. The first thing that you need to do is you need to correct these essays based on the suggestions in this video. Then you need to create an error correction list where you write down your mistakes and next to each mistake what the correct version is. You're going to add to that with each video correction you get back from us. And then the third thing you need to do is, of course, write a new set of essays using everything you've been learning both along the course and in these videos to help you progress. So please send all those three things together. If you can, try to do it within the next day or two so you can keep up your momentum and, not lose any of this progress. So I'll be waiting for your new essays. I'm looking forward to it, and I want to wish you lots of luck.